Let's see. Okay, I think we are recording. So welcome today to our coffee hour. This afternoon, not this evening, this afternoon, we're actually going to go over some of the town of Pelham's warrant articles so that, you all have an opportunity to ask questions and hear about them before you get actually to the vote. So I don't know, I know that there are a couple, Jeff Gowan, our planning director, is here. And I think if you want to go first, because you only have two, I believe, is that correct? Do you have two or three?
There are two, if they're not mine, of course, they're the zoning articles of planning board
Yeah.
Placed on the ballot, which they alone have the authority to do.
Okay. Yeah. So why don't you talk on them, and then we'll go back and discuss the others.
Sure, and I'll be happy to take any questions from your group. And if I don't, please remind me to give my direct. Well, I'll just do it now. My direct phone number here in Town Hall is 603-508-3084. So if I fail to answer questions here, people think of other questions, just call me. Not always easy to reach, but I will return your call if you leave me a message, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you have. So there are two zoning amendments on the ballot, Article 2 and Article 3. First of all, a lot of people get confused by that. Article 1, 2, 3, 4 is the order that they're placed on the ballot by the Board of Selectmen. Zoning amendments are a different number. If there were 5 zoning amendments, there would be 5 zoning amendment numbers. There are only 2. So it's not a mistake. It is accurate to have Article 2 being zoning amendment number 1. So the first one on here is many of you may recall that there was a petition last year to remove what we then called conservation subdivision ordinance from our zoning ordinance. That is a different ordinance than the one that's proposed. The planning board removed from that ordinance the pieces that they believed were objectionable to voters. So let me speak about it generally. We all are familiar with what we call conventional subdivisions, which is 1 acre, 35,000 square feet of contiguous non-wetland soils, 200 feet of road frontage. Well, that's your typical conforming lot. And years ago, many of us, including myself at the time, felt that the planning board needed an option so that we weren't just doing these cookie cutter lots, chopping up all the land. And along with that land, we were chopping up potentials for trail connectivity and for wildlife corridors, things like that. I think it's fair to say we all value, wildlife in our community, which still has a lot of rural aspects to it. And certainly trail connectivity. I know there are seniors that actively use trails. And I'm amongst your cohort. I'm going to be 65 this year, so I am classified as elderly, although it's a state of mind as much as a state of body. The idea of the conservation subdivision was to give the planning board some other tools in their toolbox. It is an innovative land use ordinance, which means the planning board is in total control over it. If there's something that say an applicant couldn't meet or was going to make the argument that they couldn't meet some piece of that, it doesn't go to the zoning board for variance. That control all rests with the planning board for any innovative land use ordinance. So the things that people objected to, I believe, and this is not just from my opinion, but from members of the board, were primarily the density offset. Before, when you would do what's called a yield plan, and that establishes how many lots you'd get in a conventional 1 acre, 200 feet of frontage situation. And then the board, depending on the attributes of the application, what it was doing that was special, the board could give as much as 20% density offset, meaning that, let's keep the numbers simple. If it was a 10 lot subdivision, they could give up to 20% or up to 2 additional lots. And they did that on some projects based on what they believed were, positive attributes. And I can, as examples, refer to Garland Woods, for instance. That project had a lot of interesting things going on, including they preserved a really important scenic vista in town. If you drive up Courier, a lot of that Garland Farms land still looks pretty good. It's not all chopped up into a field of houses. And they were keeping some portion of that land in agricultural use, which was another way to earn some additional density. That one got a couple of extra, 3 or 4 extra houses in total. But a lot of folks objected to that, and the planning board listened. So they took away, in this open space version, any ability to get any more lots than you would get in a conventional conventional subdivision. So no additional lots. The other thing that they took away is that the old ordinance didn't describe a specific lot size or specific frontage, only that the frontage could be shorter, the lots could be smaller. So this new, open space subdivision specifies that each lot of land be 7/10 of an acre as opposed to a full acre, but more than the half-acre-ish lots we were seeing on some of the prior conservation subdivision lots. They also specified frontage at 125 feet, which is less than the 200 feet that a conventional subdivision requires. But at least it's specified. It's more than some of the frontage that we're turning up in conservation subdivision. So I could sit here and describe for you the conservation subdivisions I think were really good ones, and there are some not so good, and some mediocre ones in the middle. But this, the planning board felt that they really wanted to have this open space in its toolkit, very, very strongly encouraged by Paul Gagnon and the Conservation Commission, because the other piece of this is that it more strongly encourages development of open space subdivisions where there is town land or conservation land adjoining it, so that the town can add those pieces of land where it makes sense. The selectmen, of course, have that decision to make. That's beyond the planning board's authority. But if the selectmen are inclined to accept land as conservation land, again, in the context of this being on the books as piece of zoning, then it will mean that conservation can acquire some parcels it would otherwise have to pay for with our tax dollars. That's kind of an overview. I'll break it down into pros and cons. The pro of conservation subdivisions, open space subdivisions, is that they're going to have less road associated with them. 200 feet of frontage in a conventional subdivision, you get to long roads really quickly. Ultimately, those then become the town's obligation when we own them to maintain them. So the idea of shorter roads, not half the length, but let's say a third less, maybe on average, does equate to fewer future tax dollars being devoted to maintenance of the roads, including plowing. So that's certainly one attribute in favor in the pro column, in my view. Another one is that we wind up taking open space and keeping it in larger parcels, either owned by the town or still owned by the project, again, depending on the selectmen's wishes. But when open space is chopped up into individual backyards, it's really not open space anymore. It can be mowed, it can be taken out of the equation in terms of trails, and usually is, in terms of trails and wildlife corridors, etc. So I think that's basically it. The open space ordinance has more restrictions in it than the old one, but it's still something that the board believes will be attractive to developers because it costs them less to build road, which means there's less drainage associated with the road, which means that in the future there are fewer road maintenance, and stormwater obligations that the town has to deal with. I know that's quite a mouthful, and it's a lot to try to pack in, but maybe if you think it's appropriate, Sarah, I'd be happy to take questions on that one before talking about the other one.
Yeah, probably be a good idea, because that's a lot. Does anybody have questions related to that particular ordinance that you would like to ask? You do. You just got to take yourself off of or
I have a question.
okay, yep.
So that open space concept, is that to be only shared by those living in that area, or is that open for all others as well?
It can be either way, but the way the ordinance has been written, the open space ordinance, is so that those applications will favor those pieces of land that would be offered up to the town, and if accepted by selectmen, would be added, again, for trails of wildlife for any of us to take advantage of. Now, the selectmen can't get boxed in by a planning board decision. So we couldn't have zoning that required the selectmen to accept an open space parcel because they may not want to for some reason. So that's the distinction. The planning board can approve a project with open space that is offered to the town. And in most cases, I believe that would be the case. And then the selectmen, have the authority to accept or not, depending on what they want to do. I can't imagine many scenarios where they would not want to accept that land, although we had a couple in the past under conservation subdivisions where there was some kind of infrastructure on that open space parcel, like, I don't know, some drainage or wells perhaps. And I think that the planning board and the selectmen have wisely maybe steered clear of acceptance of some of those parcels. So what we advocate now at the planning board level is that open space, if it's got those sorts of things, that open space be carved off and kept with the project. And I'll call it unencumbered open space. We don't care so much about wells, but drainage structures and things like that really is, we don't want to own those as open space land. So I think you'll see the simplest, shortest answer is most of the land through an open space subdivision, if approved, would be offered to the town, and absent some perceived problem by the Board of Selectmen, I would guess they probably would accept it.
So now if that open space isn't offered to the town, I'm specifically thinking of Savannah Drive. Those
Yes.
lots are a half an acre with the other half an acre being common land. I know my neighbors, we live in Stephanie Drive, have said, oh yeah, you can go back there, but we feel as though, no, that's two homeowners telling us we could go back and walk the trails, but not the whole, their association of the 8 houses on their street. So I would feel that we wouldn't do that unless we got it in writing from their whole association that we were allowed to. So I'm wondering, is that correct observation?
I don't have a Savannah plans in front of me, but I think you're looking at it in the appropriate way.
Okay.
If the trails are not, the town's trails, if the land isn't owned by the town, then the homeowners association controls the use of those trails.
Okay.
And I believe in that case, you are correct that those are not town trails, because I don't believe that they were adjacent to any existing town land, and
Right.
probably didn't make sense under that scenario for them to become town trails. And
Okay.
as you say, the homeowners association would have the authority to say, sure, come on, you can use these trails.
Right.
But we wouldn't be able to obligate them to do that.
Exactly. Okay, thanks.
But
Sure.
unless it's posted, is it not true that the land is open for use?
That's a legal question. I know that if, in order to enforce no trespassing, you have to post land accordingly. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that if it's not posted, it's open. I would just suggest that anyone has a question, you could I'd reach out to this department first, because we'll pull up the plans, we'll look at the notice, the conditions of approval, and we'd be able to answer in pretty short order whether or not they have, a citizen like you or me has legal access without asking anyone's permission to go on, or whether or not they need to speak with someone at the HOA to seek that permission. I'm sorry,
Thank
HOA,
you.
I mean homeowners association.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any other questions regarding that ordinance? If you do, unmute yourself. All right, seeing none, I don't know if you want to go on to the next one, Jeff, that would be great.
I will. I just wanted to say that I'm actually have the voter's guide pulled up here that the selectmen did. It's really accurate in the way it describes these two zoning amendments, and I'm sure also the rest of the ballot explanations. They always do a good job kind of walking all of us through these things. And again, I'll remind anyone that has a question, just call me directly, 603-508-3084. And if I can't give you an answer off the top of my head, I'll find one for you quickly. The other zoning article is really housekeeping, I call it. We have in the town center what we call the MUZD. That's a mixed use zoning district. We have several projects that are under construction or that are in the pipeline. One would be 52 Wyndham Road. That's a MUZD project. They're building one, I want to say, I can't remember the number of units. It might be 16 units of essentially luxury apartments is what they're calling them. And there will be a building out in the front that I basically made the architect working on that project look at lots of pictures of the old, oh, now I can't think of the name of it. Our town store in the center of town, the Atwood General Store, which burned down before I moved to Pelham, or at least it was no longer there. And but I've seen many photographs of it, and I know that its loss has been greatly lamented by the people that live here that knew it. So I challenged the architect to kind of copy many of its architectural features in that commercial building that will be in front of this this larger structure with the condos. And those, by the way, that larger building was modeled after some barns at the Shaker Village up in Canterbury. So a lot of thought went into how those things look. The other one that we've got building in the center of town is I think 9 Main Street, which is owned by Gene Prudhomme. Many of you may know it as the Shirley Sutton House. I know she lived there for many years and owned the property until she passed. Its bones weren't good enough to actually keep the original structure, so they replaced it exactly as it looked, or it's being replaced exactly as it looked in its exact same location. And that's going to have a barber shop, a restaurant, I think open for breakfast and lunch, if I'm not mistaken. He can have a couple of apartments upstairs. It's mixed use in the New England tradition of mixed use, which is literally that Pelham Center has never been purely residential. It's got churches, it's got, certainly single family residences, some multifamily residences. It's got, institutional uses, municipal uses. It's been a mixed bag for a long time. So this ordinance simply allowed that to continue, but gives, again, innovative land use. It gives the planning board the ability to shape those projects as they come in and to say, nah, we don't like this one, you're out of here, if they want. So the clarification in this language is that on any given lot in the MUZD, you can add structures, which we call infill in the planning world, but you can put in, you can do infill structures that are mixed use. It wasn't designed so people can come in and just build more apartments or build a bunch of townhouses. And the board wanted to make that clear. So there's a table of uses in the zoning, in the MUZD district zoning language. And it's that first item on the left-hand side, if you look at it, talks about one single duplex or multifamily residential structure per lot. In other words, one building, whether it's one living unit in there or 5 or more, one per lot. That's not true if you have mixed use. So you could have, the building we just described, one for residential use and then a separate building for business use. Or in one could argue it's even better if you can have that mix of residential and business uses in one physical structure. Again, that's the old New England way. Atwood General Store again, they lived above, the store downstairs. And that is, how New England developed over the centuries. Even when you had farms, they would tend to just make the farmhouses longer as their family grew, but also so they didn't have to go outside necessarily in order to get to their livestock. So you see those long old farmhouses generally connecting to barns. So that's the idea of it. Again, this is purely housekeeping. It is only to make it clear. Planning board doesn't want to see applications of somebody coming in to build, even if they got a business use on the property, to build a bunch of separate dwelling units. That's not what they believe is the character of our town center. And it's not about packing in more houses. It's about allowing a little bit more vibrancy in the district in terms of having businesses. And again, the idea of a restaurant in the town center, oh gosh, I can't wait. Because that's something we haven't had, period, since I've lived in town, and that's well over 30 years. So that's exciting. And there may be others coming. So it's not the goal is to totally change the town center, but for there to be small incremental improvements for the better, as opposed to for the worse. One of the things you learn in planning very quickly, either as a planning board member and certainly any planning director or planning department person knows, you cannot stop it. You want to try to shape it and direct it because it's going to happen. And I think that this mixed use district, it was wise zoning to put on the table. And again, it's had a little bit of tinkering, which you need to do with zoning from time to time, because you can write all the language you want. It's only in the application of that language that you discover things that need to be tweaked. And that's the instance here. So I hope I've explained that. And again, the voter's guide covers that quite efficiently. And if anyone has any other questions, I'll be happy to
I do.
answer.
I have a question on that. By the town common, you mean the area with the police station, library?
No, when I say town center, it is what that is, not town common, town center. So that it's basically, let's see, if you're looking at Beaver Brook and you're looking north, let's say along
Right.
38, it's to the other side of the brook, the town center side of the brook. It's bounded, I don't have the map in front of me, it's bounded up by about Tinney Road down to Willow, I believe, just about Willow. And a lot of that land is tied up with our schools, of course, and this municipal building, the Village Green, which some people think of as a town common. But the Village Green, town common really is the area, at least in my mind, where the little gazebo is.
Right.
Where you used to have the Christmas decorations. That's
Right,
town-owned property. I can't believe that Sutton would ever allow anyone to build. First of all, it's not big enough
Okay.
to
So you're
build
talking
anything
about
there.
the Route 38 area, essentially.
No, not Route 38. This the MUZD, the mixed use district, is on the other side of Beaver Brook from Route 38. It's right here where we are in town center. It is, I could show you on a map. It's a little bit hard to describe, although it's right in the zoning. If you look at zoning, it's bounded by the brook on one side.
Which side?
If you're in the MUZD, the brook would be between you and Route 38. If that's one way to describe it. So we're on the inside of Beaver Brook, not the outside. So this is not Route 38. That's the commercial district, business district. The town center mixed use district is, radiating out from town hall. Think of it like that. Goes as far as the brook from here. Incorporates the school properties, although you're not going to see, the kind of projects we're talking about on school land or on town land. But there are some infill opportunities and some parcels that are owned in the town center. And, you know, there's not going to be lots of these. There are going to be a few projects because there's not that much land that, you know, available that can support it. The land in town center is extremely well-drained soil. That's why the town grew up around it. And that's kind of the most important thing, meaning that water is imminently available through wells and actually now through Pennachuck and most of town center. And the soils are well drained for septic capacity. But anytime there is a proposed project before the planning board in the mixed use district, I certainly encourage citizens to, you know, to be engaged and because it belongs to all of us, not the land, but our town center. And we all are pretty passionate about how it looks. And so I would just encourage people to play a role and to share your thoughts and opinions when those come in.
Any other questions from anybody about the article that Jeff just discussed? No?
Nope. Again, feel free if you think of something afterwards, give me a call, and I'd be happy to speak with you about it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jeff.
Jim, could you repeat your phone number again? I didn't
Of
get
course.
it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. My direct line, this rings right at my desk, is 603-508-3084.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And again, I encourage you to give me a call. I'm going to mute myself, but I think I'm going to stick around a little bit and see what else gets discussed. I might learn something.
Jeff, do you want to grab Article 5? You might know the backstory better on it.
Let me get to that. 5. To be honest, I don't. I know that it is, Article 5 is 2 parcels of land being added to the Cutter Spalding Town Forest. That is something that could be better spoken with. I mean, I'll go over the explanation here. It places 2 parcels of land under the management of the Forest Committee. So the land, this isn't about the purchase of the land, I don't believe. It's about who runs it, who manages it. Forest Committee, I think they do a pretty good job. They certainly are good stewards, like the Conservation Commission, of our, you know, commonly owned town land and conservation land and town forests. But I think this is just about, as I interpret this, who manages it, not whether or not it should get purchased, because I believe it has been purchased. Let's see, add the following to the article places the following parcels of land under the management of the Forest Committee. This parcel contains wetlands on the east side of the Class 5 end of Spalding Hill Road. That parcel sits across the street on the west side of Spalding Hill Road. So that is as much as I understand about it, and I apologize for not being more up to date on that. Okay, but certainly I would invite, because I know I can, if you have questions about that one, if you send them to me, I will reach out to the forestry folks or to Paul Gadman to get you an answer. So just, I'll mute myself and listen for a bit instead of talking.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate your time and helping us go over those. So that was really well done. Thank you. Jay, I know I had asked you kind of to fill in. We used to have Bill McDevitt, who always was so good about coming in and going over these warrant articles. And I know they're not, because I went to deliberative session last night. It didn't seem like there were too many that were really had tax impact and or really too difficult. So maybe the rest of them, I know warrant article number 4 is the town budget. Is that correct? Because I don't have, yep. So want you all to vote yes on the town budget. Say you're all saying yes. All right, that's important because, and I'm going to put my pitch in now. So that town budget, the department heads have always been tasked to maintain as little increase as possible. And some of those increases you're going to see are due to contractual things, like we don't have control over Comcast, the cost of trash pickup, retirement costs, things of that nature. Some of those things are built into the budget. And there are some budgets, say like the police and the fire, and then maybe Jay will want to talk a little bit about that too. They don't have control over some of those contracts that they've got coming up where they have some increases built in for certain things. So the town, I think, does a very, very good job at keeping those costs down. Our budget for the senior center, I can address that with you guys, has gone up a little bit. And that is mostly because I've put in for a full-time position for Susan, who is my office manager, to increase from 20 to 40 hours. So it's really important that for me, that budget goes through. It's crazy here. Anybody who's been here during the day knows that, like, it's nuts, and trying to do that with just one staff person is really difficult. So I'm really hopeful that you'll sit to tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, anybody who lives in Pelham to vote yes on Article number 4. I'd really appreciate it. So other than that, I'm going to let Jay, I'm going to let you handle the rest of them. And if people have specific questions about the town budget, you might want to just kind of go over the rest of that I didn't mention. So.
Hey, John.
So,
Yeah, no, you explained it pretty well. I mean, it's not that big of a difference in the budget from last year. So, I mean, we're pretty close. If anybody has any questions on any of the amounts, I mean, I can answer whatever you got for the budget.
yeah, I know when I was looking at it, there's really not much increase town-wise. The school budget's totally different, so we don't kind of do the school budget. And I think their deliberative session, is it tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
So,
it'll be-
yep, so that'll be on TV. So if you do have any interest, I believe the Pelham TV does air deliberative session. So you can watch that if you want to see what the schools are proposing. I do know that they are looking at doing some renovations in the middle school, I believe. So, and I know that that's quite a hot button issue, but it looks like really well needed. So I would, think that anybody that has questions about that, you might want to watch tonight. And I believe it should start at 7:00.
Yep, that's correct. If you want, we can jump back over to Article 1, which is election of officers. And I do have the list of the people running, and if people want to jot that down. Basically, selectmen, we have 1 for 3 years. Douglas V'ger is the only person who put his name in for that. Budget committee, we have 3 for 3 years, and 4 people put their name in for that. Meg Brissett, Amber Capone, Paul M. Grant, Gregory G. Smith. So that's 4 people putting in for a 3-person spot. Cemetery trustee, it's 1 person for 3 years. No one put their name in for that. So we have no one for that position. Library trustee, 1 person for 3 years. We have 2 people running. Diane M. Chubb, Becky K. Roos Hopkinson is the 2nd person. Trustee of the trust funds, it's 1 person for 3 years. Edmund J. Gleason. And planning board, we have 2 people for 3 years. Gregory Estevez, Roger J. Momblo, and Danielle Massey Quinn. Does anybody need me to repeat any of those names or any of those positions? All right.
Quick question, Jay, and I know in other town elections, it's always been hard to find information on those folks who are running. I mean, there are some people that we're real familiar with who have served in different parts of committees or whatever, and most people that follow the town politics are aware of them. But do you know, is there any way for voters to learn about those folks running for positions? Especially, I know that you were talking about the budget committee, and there's 4 people running for 3 positions. Do you know?
Yeah, so I mean, you can get a lot of this information from our website, and the voter guide, it's a draft right now. It's going to be hopefully issued by the end of the day or tomorrow. And I'm pretty sure those names will be on it. But unfortunately, I think you really just got to pay attention and go on Facebook. I'm sure these people have different things on Facebook to get from there. But other than that, in our local site, I don't know of anything else.
Okay.
If I could just jump in, something that we used to do here in town, and I shouldn't say we because it was never run by the select board or anything, but there was a candidates night. I think in the past it was run, I think the senior center may have even sponsored a couple.
Yeah.
And I know that the VFW, I think, may
Yeah.
have done some in the past.
Yeah.
But it's really unfortunate that that hasn't been happening of late, because it gives the audience assembled there an opportunity to ask questions of candidates and to better understand where they're coming from. I know in this COVID reality we're living with, that is a bigger challenge than even it normally would be. But it's something that I hope, however we do it in future, we can get back to, because it just helps voters that are interested become more informed and have a chance to ask questions of those candidates. I know because I ran for selectman, gosh, many years ago. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did. And I participated in a candidates night. And, you know, it was informative to me as well as to the citizens. So enough said about that.
I think I know, Madeline, it was, we had done one, the VFW and the Council on Aging had worked on that in the past. And with COVID, it's definitely a bit of a challenge. So, yeah, definitely. I know the COA would like to do that in the future, and the board has talked about making sure that we try to get information out to our seniors about those folks running. It's always hard. It would be lovely if when people apply for positions, there's like a little something that they can put down that could be made public. And I don't know if that's something that the selectmen would have to vote on, or something where that information could either go into the voter's guide or be given or put out somewhere, so that when people are going, like a little bit about like someone who's running for, they lived in the town for X amount of years, and they are this background, or why they want to be on the committee, why they want to be on the budget committee, or cemetery trustee, or whatever it is that they're applying for. It would be, I think, helpful, because that's what I hear from my seniors a lot, is that they get these names, but they don't know, and a lot of them aren't on Facebook or have access or go on the web at all. So I don't know, Jay, if that would be something that could that be done, or is that like something you just can't do?
Yeah, it's just difficult because if you don't get everybody involved in it, then if we're giving out information, it's almost one-sided. So
Yeah.
it's tough. It's almost like if you're going to vote, unfortunately, you do got to put in some type of effort to see who you're voting for.
Yeah.
Most of these up and coming people are really getting into social media and stuff like that. So the information is out there, but unfortunately, you got to look for it.
Yeah, it's hard. Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, and just bear with me here because I am still open, so I'm trying to like scare people away and walk up to the door here. So next we'll jump up to 6, Article 6. Basically, the fire department is looking to replace a 2009 GMC 4500 that is no longer in production as a vehicle model. If this article passes, the town will have its new ambulance delivered in late 2021, given the lengthy construction time. Approving this article will have no impact on the tax rate because funds have been appropriated through the ambulance fund revolving account, which generates its funds from past ambulance revenues. For example, the 907 calls that ambulances respond to in 2019, 907 calls. So, yeah, so it won't have any tax effects on the new ambulance. I believe that's $295,000. Any questions on Article 6?
Nope, don't see any questions.
All right, Article 7. So Article 7 is shall the town vote raise appropriate sum of $320,768 for repair, maintenance, purchase, of equipment and upgrading town roads to be offset by the state highway grant. This will be a non-lapsing account per RSA 37 dash, no money to be raised by taxation, recommended by the selectmen, recommended by the budget committee. This basically is just a grant. It's funded from the gas tax. Town uses the fund to approve town roads and to purchase and maintain highway equipment. This has no impact on local property taxes.
And is that one, because I think there is that the one that every year we get, the state offers that to us? I think it
Yes.
is. Yeah, and there's no tax impact, and it's just basically money from the state, which is a good one. Okay.
Yeah, no, and we have to say, we are really lucky in this town. We have great roads. We definitely take care of our roads.
Mhm.
So it's good.
All right. Anybody have a question on that particular warrant article? I don't see any. All right, you can go. We'll go on.
All right, so Article 8, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate sum of $200,000 to be placed in the compensated absence trust fund for the purpose of distributing accrued time, annual earned and paid time off to terminated employees as required by law or negotiated contracts. Majority vote required, recommended by the Board of Selectmen, recommended by the Budget Committee. The town is legally obligated to keep a balance of 50% of the town's liability in the fund. The sum requested will allow the town to replace expended funds due to retirements and employees who have left our employment. The funds and fund this legal standard. By appropriating this money for the compensated absence fund, the town is assured of having sufficient funds to cover the obligations. So this is kind of, we have to do it type of situation. We don't have a choice.
All right, are there any questions about that particular warrant article? These are pretty straightforward. Okay, Jay, you can go ahead.
So the citizens petition is Article 9. Are you in favor of repealing in its entirety the provision RSA 4114B that was created by Article 21 of the 2017 town warrant passed as the March 2007 town elections, which authorizes the selectmen to establish and amend certain town codes ordinances after they held 2 public hearings on establishment or amendment of the ordinance or code, provided, however, upon the written petition of 50 registered votes presented to the selectmen prior to their vote on the establishment of amendment to the ordinance or code, where the issue shall be instead inserted as an article on the warrant at the next town meeting, the authority to establish or amend town ordinances or building codes which are governed by the rules RSA 675. A yes vote would give any and all voting rights back to the town, not recommended by the Board of Selectmen. And technically, I can't really give an explanation for this because it's a citizen petition. It's not something we made.
Does anyone have any questions in regards to that particular warrant article?
I'm going to jump in here just because I think I need to. And Mr. Bergeron's in a difficult spot because he's a selectman. I can tell you, I've watched our selectmen very closely because I've been at about half their meetings over the past 15 years. And they need to have the ability to be somewhat nimble when it comes to some of these ordinances and things, both to address shortcomings in past ordinances. But, you know, you vote these people in because you trust them. At least that's why I vote for them. And the ordinances that they work on, they don't take lightly. That's why they hold the public hearings. They do listen to the public. But they need to act, you know, expeditiously in some cases. And I'm not going to throw out examples because, you know, they can range for, you know, all over the map in terms of what might need to be addressed. And then having to articulate all that, explain it all on a ballot is as challenging, I think, as it is trying to have zoning on a ballot, because you can't put all the language in there usually. So you have to kind of trim it down and hit the salient points. So, I mean, I'll just put it this way. I intend to vote against this particular petition, and I'm not that's not, no select person can really address that because as Mr. Bergeron said, it's a citizen's petition. But think about what it means, like I'm sure you'll think about what all these mean. It sounds good to say, turn it back to the voters so it can be on the ballot. But that means you got one shot every year to try to deal with things. And I've seen cases where the selectmen needed to act more swiftly to address, and these are always citizen concerns. It's a citizen who brings these things up for them to think about and to try to deal with. So enough said. I know Mr. Bergeron can't really comment on it, but I think it's, again, I vote for select people because I trust the actions that they take.
I think that's a good point that you made up, that there are certain situations that do arise, Jeff, that require those people that you elect to make decisions more quickly. I mean, especially when you look at stuff that have happened this year with COVID. And if you had, not that there was anything that ordinances wide, but if there was, like say a mask ordinance or this kind of, or what you couldn't wait until March to get an ordinance that was something needed in like October of the year before. So I do think that that is an important thing, and that's why you should be very diligent when you go to the polls about who you're electing as your select people. And I think the select people in this town do a very good job as well of posting notices when they're discussing issues and problems that are coming up, and they have several opportunities to have public comment before I think they even go ahead and do. I don't know if that's always the case. Jay, you might want to talk about that, but I do think that the selectmen, when there's an issue and you guys have to vote on stuff, there's usually public hearings about it.
Yes, no,
yeah.
it says right that we go up to 2 public hearings on the
Yeah.
major stuff. And I gotta say, we're extremely transparent,
Mhm.
and it's our biggest frustration is not enough people getting involved. So we throw it out there, no one comes, gives their information, we make the decision, and now everybody's coming and getting upset. And I go, well, where were you in the last 6 months? We've been working on this. So
Yeah.
that's our biggest problem, is getting the information out there. But everybody has a very extremely busy life, so
Yep.
it's just difficult. That's our biggest issue. Same with you guys trying to figure out where people stand and who to vote for. We're
Mhm.
trying to get our information out there, and we can only do so much.
And it's hard too, because we don't have a newspaper, in town. So for folks,
Exactly.
yeah, so that's a tough one. So I agree with Jeff. I think it's something that very difficult. So, all right. And I don't live here in town, but so I can comment because I don't live here in town, but I agree with Jeff. All right, Jay, you can, does anybody else have any comments or have any questions about that warrant article? No? All right, if you want to,
Yeah, so basically that should be it. And voting is Tuesday, March 9th, 7 to 8. And masks are mandatory. So spread the word. You gotta wear masks coming to school.
okay, good. Well, that's great. And if you, for our seniors out there, if anyone needs a ride or knows of somebody that needs a ride to the polls, please let me know. We do have our buses running on a daily basis, so we can, and we will be bringing people to the polls as well, so we can get them on our schedule. So I again want to thank Jay. I want to thank Jeff so much for coming in. Paula, did you have a comment or?
I have a question. I'm concerned about the closing of the transfer station and with this trash pickup. How is that going to work? If they do trash pickup, are they going to close the recycling place? And what about, like, I'm talking myself in particular, I have a 9 driveway, and it gets covered with snow or ice. How am I supposed to get these barrels down at the end of my road? To me, it's easier to go to the recycling place. So nobody spoke about that, and I'm just concerned about that.
So I can kind of clear that up for you. So basically the whole, it being on the ballot, that was all fake news. Someone put fake signs up saying that we're gonna be voting on it. There is no voting. All we're trying to do is prepare ourselves for the future, because the prices are going to skyrocket in recycling. So we wanted to basically try to get as many different quotes on different aspects of handling our trash. We did the trash pickup RFP. It came back. It was way too expensive. It's not for Pelham. I agree with you. The transfer station is basically what's staying. And we just need to kind of make some quirks down there to try to possibly recycle more and do some more different stuff and change some stuff around so that it's more affordable for the taxpayer. Unfortunately, we can't control these rising prices. We're in a really good contract right now, but it expires, I believe, in like a year and a half. And the cost is going to be significant. So we're just trying to weigh out all our options so we're ready at that point, figure out which way we're going to go. But there will not be trash pickup.
Okay, if they decide to go with trash, and I'm saying it's a big if, is this something where the people like we would have to pay for it, or does the town pay for it, or nobody knows yet?
So it's over. We threw away the RFP. There will not be trash pickup in Pelham, New Hampshire.
Okay,
Case closed. It's
that's
done.
all I wanted to know.
Yeah,
Thank you
no,
very much.
all we're trying to try going forward is just make it more efficient and cheaper for the taxpayer.
Okay,
I have
thank
a
you.
question. You said the cost of recycling. I always thought we got money for say the metals and the paper and everything, the cans. It costs us? We don't get money?
So for whatever reason, in the past years, and I'm new to this, but they stopped separating the aluminum and stuff like that. And so now we're not getting paid for it. So I think going forward, we need to get back to the sorting, in my opinion, but we're still trying to run those numbers. We're purchasing a glass crusher to crush all the glass that we receive from the trash, and they actually mix it into the sand, and they use it in the highway department. So we're trying to get back to almost what we used to do 5 to 10 years ago. I wasn't around for why they stopped, so I don't know why they stopped. But no, it's expensive to get rid of the plastics and stuff like that. A lot of towns are actually going to just straight trash because it's much cheaper. We're not ready to do that.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I appreciate you talking about that, Jay. Even though it wasn't one of the warrant articles.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions before?
I just have a comment. I think the transfer station is very well run, and believe it or not, I actually enjoy going to it. Gets me out of the house once a week. So I'd like to see it continue.
Plus, the people down there are very helpful. I know they help
Oh,
me
they're
out.
wonderful. They're wonderful.
Great. They are great people.
They got my Rhonda. Love her. She's fabulous down there. They are. Our trash folks are great. And I can attest for Rhonda. Rhonda Martin's fabulous. She's she used to volunteer with me. I was so sad when she got hired, but happy for her at the same time.
Oh,
But yeah, so yeah, we do have a great trash recycling center. We have great highway department too. Our roads were great this snowstorm, so. All right.
I taught in Billerica for a lot of years. And as I was driving going south to go to Billerica. As soon as I crossed the state line, I would notice a difference in the upkeep of the roads. Pelham just does such a great job with the roads, and I think it's just wonderful. We're blessed to live where we are living now.
Agree. It's a great community all the way around. I agree, definitely. And I didn't know you taught in Billerica. I grew up in Billerica.
Oh, you did? Oh, you may have had me as a student.
Where did you teach? Do you mind me asking?
At the high school.
Oh, you did? Get out of town.
Yeah, I taught chemistry there.
Oh, how cool. I don't know if I took, I did take chemistry, but I don't remember my chemistry teacher. Cool.
Well, that's not good.
I don't remember what I had for breakfast, George. That's why I run the senior center. Come on. All right. Well, anyways, I'm going to end the recording unless there's anything else. Any other further questions before I end our recording?
Well,
No,
while
just-
we're complimenting people,
Yeah,
Our
just
senior
thanks.
center is really phenomenal. I'm also a member of the Dracut Senior Center and the Lowell Senior Center.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, like activities have been very nil compared to what you're doing. And as for passing on information and
Mhm.
doing things like this, it's like, so you deserve a full-time assistant.
Oh,
You
thanks.
wouldn't need one if you didn't do what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been a little bit crazy here. I'm glad we've been lucky. We have a great health officer though too. Karen McGlynn has been a lifeline to me here at the center. She's been great, and so Jay, hire her full time because she's fabulous. I don't know if she's on the opportunity to get her regularly, because she kind of came on when we had this whole COVID thing. She's amazing and has been so helpful for us here. And that's one of the reasons why I've been able to open and do what I've done, is because of her expertise and guidance in regards to all of the stuff that we're doing. So I think we're really lucky. The town is very lucky to have such great staff in working with all of these different things. So thank you, Joan. I appreciate that.
Tara, what year did you graduate?
I graduated in 85.
85. Oh, wow, yeah. I was still there. I started in 75.
Okay, yeah. So I'm sure I was a Lecomte. So I'm sure you might have had one of the Lecomtes at one time.
Yeah, probably.
We have there were a lot of us in Billerica.
Mhm.
But, all right, well, let me
Thank
stop.
you, everybody. Stay
Thank
safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate everybody coming and I appreciate Jeff and Jay. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome, and we will see you guys at our next coffee clutch. So thanks again for joining us.
All right, take care.
All right, yep. Bye-bye.
Oh.